All right, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all members and guests to the November 5th, 2024 Public Hearing Committee meeting, and remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised, so if you could take a moment to ensure your phone is on silent, that would be appreciated. With that, I call the November 5th, 2024 Public Hearing Committee meeting to order, and note that Councillor Columbus and Brenton have sent their regrets today. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, mover and a seconder, please, to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Michelli, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All in favor? Carried. I now officially open public meetings held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and County Policy. Please be advised that under the Ontario Planning Act as amended by the province, only specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act may appeal a decision of Norfolk County to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Third parties or anyone who is not a specified person or public body do not have the right to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, to preserve the ability to be a party to any appeal to the OLT, third parties or general members of the public are required to make comments or provide written submissions here today. These meetings are to allow oral and written comments as input to decisions on specific development applications. And the first item on the agenda is report CD 24-141, the return of Birds Canada.
Yes, thanks through the chair. So for the first application, we have Ms. Wharton is on a line, and Kendall, if you could take it over, please do the overview.
Thank you. I'm just gonna wait for this. Thank you. All right, through the chair, this application seeks an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the construction of new research buildings and the relocation of an existing building in the provincially significant wetland designation. Next slide, please. The property is located at the tip of Long Point and covers approximately 40.3 hectares, so that's 99.6 acres. There's no street frontage. The lands contain a cabin, a storage shed, and a temporary storage container. The cabin is proposed to be retained and moved to a safer location within the subject lands. Next slide. As mentioned, the site is zoned and designated as provincially significant wetland. Next slide, please. This application proposes to relocate the existing legally non-conforming cabin to a safer location within the site and to construct a workshop, research station, and new cabins to accommodate researchers, staff, and students. Next slide. A planning rationale report, a background document, and an environmental impact study have been provided as part of the complete application. No technical or public input has been received at this time. Next slide. Preliminary considerations at this time relate to servicing needs and the protection of natural features. Next slide, please. In conclusion, this proposal seeks an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the continued use of the site as a research facility and to permit the construction and relocation of new and existing structures on the site. Staff recommend that staff report CD 24-141 for development applications OPNPL 2024-218 and ZMPL 2024-220 be received as information, and that any comments received at this meeting be considered as part of the decision process for a future recommendation staff report. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Can I just get some clarity, Brandon? This was returning because we didn't have the correct date circulated the first time around, but the file has still been advanced through the planning department, right?
To the chair, that's correct. We were just re-advertised for the date because the public hearing committee last month turned out to be on the Wednesday, which was a little different than our normal Tuesday. So just to make sure technically we are legally there on our advertising of the public meeting and the public has the opportunity to be here today, we've brought it back. Same as the next item, the technical update.
Okay, thought so. Thank you. Is there anyone here that would, questions to Kendall? No. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the report in council chambers? Come on up. Just hit the button on the right-hand side of the microphone for us, Stu, and then state your name for the public record.
Is that good? I'm Stuart McKenzie, Director of Strategic Assets at Birds Canada. And I just wanted to provide a couple minutes of overview, as much for context as to the project, maybe answer some questions ahead of time so that council appreciates the scope of our tenure and activities at the tip and what we've invested thus far. There is a very short presentation if that can be prompted. And you can just skip the pretty slide. Thank you. So our tenure extends back to 1960 at the tip of Long Point. Sorry, next slide. Yeah. And just for reference, we've had a history of occupation at the tip with a variety of cabins over the years, the existing cabins, acquisition of the Coast Guard's facilities, and then since the demolition and cleanup of previously federally owned buildings, and the consequences of high water and storm surges over the past 5 years that Birds Canada, a national nonprofit, has taken responsibility, both financially and in some cases other aspects of responsibility for. And then we started this process about 4 years ago, so it's been a long road, negotiating provincial and the county jurisdictions to figure out how to rebuild, which was a challenge not just for us, but for the county and the province. And that brings us here today. And so that's where we are today. Next slide, please. And our investments today, we're about close to $250,000 into this before we've even built anything, just in terms of cleaning up the existing demolition, reclaiming and sort of saving and protecting what was there already. About $25,000 for the environmental assessment and other design and consulting needs, and then planning application fee to bring me here today, which was about $16,500. I need to emphasize that all of these funds were raised through donations by the organization. The planning fee alone is sort of the equivalent to what the observatory would bring in from donations in a year. And then our plan moving forward is to enter a fundraising period to establish the buildings and a bit of an endowment maintenance fund for the buildings, which will probably be in about the $500,000 range. And that's about it. Just for your more information on the next slide, you can visit the website, the annual report of the Bird Observatory, to understand the scope of the activities and the significance of the tip to basically hemispheric bird conservation and science. And I thank you very much for your time. And I don't know if this is appropriate to entertain any questions, but I'll sit down and follow lead. So thank you.
Yeah, no, we might have a couple questions for you, so just hang on for a second. That's great. Thanks for bringing that context. And while I have you here, I highly recommend everyone go do a tour. Really, really neat. Councillor Michelli?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming forward with this, Stu. I think it's going to provide a lot of information for council. Stu, can you just give council a little bit of context about why this project is so necessary?
Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of time, so I'd encourage you to visit. What I sort of ended with was the tip of Long Point is sort of the starting point that for many and most of bird conservation activities and a lot of ornithological science in North America today. So the Bird Observatory started at the tip of Long Point in 1960. It has grown, it has inspired, it has brought in ornithologists from around the world, built Birds Canada and many other observatories and like organizations around North America and the hemisphere, ideally. So it's kind of hard to draw the significance from like just the little station at the tip of Long Point, but if you were to bring in almost any ornithologist from the Western Hemisphere, you'd be only 2 or 3 degrees separated from an experience at Long Point. And that's probably the easiest way for me to sum up the importance for us to maintain facilities and a presence there and elsewhere in the community.
Thank you, Stu. And just for members of council, as Mayor Martin said, if you ever do get an opportunity to visit that tip, I was fortunate enough to have Stu take me out there this summer, and it is a very impressive site and a very impressive location. Stu, I just want to focus in a little bit on, and you mentioned that, a lot of this project will also require some fundraising. So there is no actual, financial return on investment for this project, is there?
No, so as a nonprofit, there's no financial return period, but then almost everything we do is at a loss as a community service. Thing that I didn't mention was the amount of land stewardship, habitat protection, species at risk protection, as well as everybody would know the tip of Long Point's quite an attractive tourism destination, and you can guess who cleans up after them. So I lost track a little bit there. There is no means for us to reclaim. It's, if anything, it's a community service that we're providing on the backs of our members and supporters.
Thank you, Stu.
Any other questions? Councillor Van Adrishi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. So what you're saying is that in future, will there be opportunities for more tourism there?
The land is owned by the province, and it's a provincially significant wetland. The land is publicly accessible, so anybody that can get there can visit and explore. But we're not in the business of actually tour operations.
Oh, okay, you don't.
Everything we do is sort of passive or with specific needs to the operation there. As a consequence, we kind of deal with what tourism does happen there naturally.
Okay. So as the access the point, can you drive there still, or no? Or you have to take by boat?
Technically, yes. Legally, no. So there's private land and National Wildlife Area that restricts access, so it's only accessible by boat.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? 16th up, Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I just want to go back to kind of the financial circumstance for a project like this, Stu. You, in the slides that you showed us, the planning fees for Norfolk County are looks like about $16,500 for this application, and I'm just want to voice maybe a little bit of to get a little bit perhaps of a consideration from our planning department for future, that we are charging the same rate for this for and this is for all our nonprofits. For this nonprofit, the same fees apply as they would apply to any developer, which is going to have obviously a return on investment, and they can always pass these application fees on to their customers and their purchasers. But Birds Canada in this instance is not able to do that. So I'm just putting that out there to perhaps have staff have a look at possible future adjustments to that fee structure, so that we can provide not-for-profits a little bit more opportunity to pursue projects like this.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming and providing that insight. Anyone else wish to speak to the application? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this application? And final call. Are there any questions for Mary, because she was present with us the last time around, but we didn't hear the full staff report? No? Okay. There's a staff recommendation that is report CD 24-141 for development application OPNPL 2024-218 and ZNPL 2024-220 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Michelli and Councillor Huffman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 4.2, we have report CD 24-140, which is a housekeeping bylaw.
Thanks. Turn that back over to Kendall.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, this zoning bylaw amendment is proposed to update the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014 to address minor outstanding technical items related to implementation barriers and necessary clarifications. Next slide, please. Section 34 of the Planning Act grants the council the authority to pass a zoning bylaw and subsequent amendments. This process is intended to ensure clarity in operations and correct minor inconsistencies in the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. A detailed list of the proposed changes has been included in Attachment C of the report. These changes include an amendment to the exemptions from yard provision, an amendment to the permitted height for boathouses, an amendment to the long-term care facility definition, an amendment to the retirement home definition. Next slide, please. As well as an amendment to the usable floor area definition, an amendment to the cannabis production and processing provisions, an amendment to the bunkhouse definition, an amendment to or in addition to the agricultural zone provisions, and an amendment to the farm operation definition. Next slide, please. No technical or public comments have been received at this time. Next slide, please. And the proposed amendments are county-wide changes and therefore will impact all key items. Next slide, please. In conclusion, this zoning bylaw amendment seeks to update the Norfolk County zoning bylaw to address minor technical items and make necessary clarifications. Staff recommend that staff report CD 24140 be for development application ZNPL 2024-277 be received for information, and that any comment received be considered in the decision, and that the decision be made in accordance with bylaw 2022-106, which assigns delegated approval to the Director of Planning or Designate for minor zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Questions of staff? Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will make the same comments I made last time, that there's a couple of little things I question, and one is on number 8, the zone provisions for a maximum lot area on surplus farm dwellings. And I think I brought it to her attention that surplus farm dwellings are existing homes, so they're not always situated in the perfect location to be able to apply a maximum size. And I had suggested that maybe we could include some wording to try to take out the minimal amount of cultivated agricultural acres rather than putting a hard cap on it. So I hope staff will consider an amendment there. And also on the number 9, the farm operation, the definition where it's operated by one person, that doesn't fit the real world either. There's a lot of, well, actually, there's a lot of companies, a lot of husband and wife partnership that is not a formal partnership. There's all sorts of different types of operations, and to limit it to one person only, I don't think you're going to find too many that fit that category. So hope staff would have a little bit of legal advice on a better wording for that option. So.
Okay, great suggestions. Brandon, do you have any comments on that?
Through the chair, I'd look to Ms. Wharton and Mr. Alam if they have any initial response to that, but we can for sure look into those two particular matters further. I don't know, Mohammed or Kendall, if there's any initial response.
Through the chair, I can confirm that our zoning bylaw does have a definition for person in it, and it does include corporations or multiple people. So that item we can certainly make sure to clarify, but there is a definition in the zoning bylaw already that covers person as more than one entity.
Well, usually in the bylaw, when the word is defined somewhere, it's written in italics rather than regular text, and it didn't show up that way here in the report. So.
Then we will certainly, we can certainly look to make that correction then. My apologies.
Any comments on minimum acreage?
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Kendall.
Sorry. Thank you. Through the chair, the intent behind the minimum acreage is to provide clarity to make sure that the minimum amount of area is being used for surplus farm dwellings as per the zoning bylaw. It's just a clarification item to just kind of make sure that that is what is happening when it comes to committee of adjustment decisions on surplus farm dwelling differences.
Councillor Van Passen first, just respond to that.
Yeah, but that would be my point. This is not talking about minimum acreage. It's talking about maximum acreage, which again is hard to do with a house that was built 150 years ago and it's sitting 500 feet back from the road. And, you know, again, if we put some wording in there that we will attempt to minimize the amount of agricultural cultivated land taken out of production, but with a hard cap like that, then they're going to be looking at having exemptions when they're just trying to do the right thing. So again, I think we can probably deal with the situation better by having some suggestions rather than the hard cap.
Through Madam Mayor, on that particular issue, what happened right now is when somebody is applying for a surplus dwelling severance, in case they need more lands than what is prescribed in the bylaw, they go for a minor variance. And generally, if there is a technical reason, for example, as Councillor said, that minor variance is approved. So that process is already on place through a minor variance. If council wish that we provide some more flexibility so that they don't go for a minor variance, then that's a separate conversation. But right now, the process is in place. In case they need more land, they can go through a minor variance.
Do you want me to go to Councillor Van Andriesch, and you can, sure, Councillor Van Andriesch.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. That's a concern I have as well. When you're listing a maximum, then you have to go through a minor variance. As Councillor Van Passen has indicated, many older, because you have to be a certain age to be able to get the house off the farm anyway. But at the end of the day, lots of times it's built back farther, but the septic system is way back farther. The lines run far, so it's a lot more than an acre. That's, and if you have to go to, you know what I mean? So making it hard and fast like that, but then has to put those people that are making application to go through that again, another step, seems a bit difficult for people sometimes, and costly as well. So if there was something a little bit open-ended, that it could be, that would help out.
Through Madam Mayor, the concern I think from staff is, yes, definitely it is understood that there is a need for some technical reasons, but without any specific prescription, there would be possibility of other applications that may not need that amount of land, but they can easily go through this process. So I think staff has the concern for those applications.
Councillor Van Passen.
Well, I'll ask the question because I've never found it. Do we have any other zone where we have a maximum lot size? Because I can't think of any. We have the minimum lot size, and I still don't understand why the minimum lot size in the ag zone is half an acre, and in a hamlet it's 1 acre. Like, that doesn't make sense. We should lower the hamlet one maybe, but again, these are only in the situation where it is a surplus farm dwelling that could be 50, 100, 150, 200 years old. And I think I mentioned this last time, the old timers always told me when you started out farming, you found the well first, and then you built the barn and the house wherever the well happened to be. And sometimes that's not 27 feet from the road end of the road allowance. So it is kind of hard to, if you put the hard cap on like that. And is it better to make suggestions that we want to limit the amount of cultivated land lost? And maybe there are times I've seen applications where you have a long, narrow driveway and then it widens out where the house and the buildings are to try to get the minimum amount of area taken out of ag production. But to put the hard cap on it, all it does is forces, if that's the only logical way to do it, it forces the applicant to pay more money, go to another meeting, get another amendment, and I just don't think that's right for existing houses. It's not like they're building new ones, so that's why I suggest that we just get rid of that hard cap and put in some wording in the official plan and the zoning bylaw that we're trying to minimize it, and we do our best to achieve that without that hard and fast number in there.
Through the chair, just one point about that, I guess, is that the zoning bylaw intent is we do need a hard and fast number if there's something in the zoning bylaw, so it's more clear, black and white. If we were to look at some guidance, that would be more policies, official plan policies. So I think that's what I would suggest is either there's some official plan policies that gives the guidance, and then if there is something in the bylaw that needs a number. So it's either the number is maybe a little bit different or it's not there.
Well, that would be my point. We have hard caps on the minimum size, because you need a certain amount of area to put the house, put the well, put the septic. I can understand that. Nowhere else for any other zone have I ever found anything where there's a maximum size of a lot. You know, there's no maximum size for a lot in an industrial zone, in an R1, R2, R3, R4. There's no maximum size. And I don't want to start a new trend when, again, we're looking at only in certain situations where it's a surplus farm dwelling that is already existing and there's no need to put a hard cap on it. Put some more wording in the policy part of the official plan. I can see that, and it'll get quoted in the reports, and all the applicants and the staff will do their best to get it to the smallest amount that is feasible and get rid of the hard cap. That just makes for more work and more paperwork and more expense.
Okay, so how should we handle that? Some direction, amendment, pull that one out and move forward with the rest?
This is still the public hearing
Right.
for comments. The staff will come back with a final report, and if, if they paid some attention to the comments that came from around this table, then there might be a change in the report, and if there isn't, then we'll argue it at that time, right? So,
Okay, just reading the recommendation here.
Yep, through the chair, that would be helpful if we go to the recommendation, because otherwise this would be delegated to staff. So if there is any direction from committee to revise the recommendation, if you would like the zoning bylaw to come back to council for a decision, or as mentioned by the chair, to move forward with everything except for that one, that could be further considered in future zoning.
Councillor Van Passen.
well, that was going to be next on my list when you were asked if we want to make a motion. I was going to delete that last section out of the staff recommendation and have it come back to council.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation, part 1 and part 2 there, and not the third one. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff then related to the items or direction you want to provide them with? Okay, there is a motion on the floor to the staff report CD 24-140 for development applications at NPL 2024-277 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting shall be considered in the decision. I'm gonna leave it at that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Van Andrieschie, discussion or debate? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 4.3 is report CD 24-133.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. The next one, we have Mr. Alam's going to help out with this development application overview. Mohammed?
Thank you, Brendan. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and the Council. The land referred to as 24 St. Ladislas Street is located within the hamlet official plan designation of Courtland, and it is currently split zoned between urban residential type 3 and hamlet residential. The residential type 3 zone area is covered by special provision 14.383, which allowed for the construction of existing fourplex to the rear of this section of the property. The entire site has an area of 3.88 acres, or approximately 1.5 hectare. The application seeks for a zoning bylaw amendment to allow for a section of land currently zoned as R3 to be changed to hamlet residential. This would also require a special provision to address an undersized lot. The hamlet residential zone provisions would allow for a single detached dwelling, a bed and breakfast, daycare, home industry, home occupation, and additional dwelling unit. Next slide, please. The subject lands are roughly T-shaped and wholly contained within the hamlet official plan boundary. The existing fourplex site, it is located well back from the frontage, and the entire lot is within R3 zone. The surrounding properties are in hamlet residential zone with a section of neighborhood institutional to the northwest, to the north, which includes the Roman Catholic Episcopal Church and a cemetery. There are agricultural fields to the rear, to the site, and to the northeast. Next slide, please. It is proposed to change the part of the existing R3 lot, an area of approximately 0.16 hectares, to Hamlet Residential. Given this area would result in an undersized lot based on 0.4 hectare minimum lot size for Hamlet Residential lots, a special provision would need to be added to account for this deficiency. It is approved by, if approved by council, a severance application would be necessary to sever the newly created Hamlet Residential part of the lot prior to the future development. Next slide, please. The technical comments received prior to the submission of this report to clerks have been provided and are contained in attachment C. As noted above, the attachment D for the proposed proposal, no public comments have been received, and there have been 2 phone calls seeking clarification for the proposal, but no comments was provided. Next slide, please. Considerations at this time can be given to the need for creation of an infill lot to allow future residential development within the hamlet boundary. While a smaller lot, it would be required to provide room for a dwelling and septic system, given that the property in Cortland are on municipal water and therefore no well will be required. Next slide, please. To conclude, the proposal for this zoning bylaw amendment to allow the change of use of a section of the land from R3 to Hamlet Residential Area, staff recommend that this report CD 20-133 for development application be received for information, and any comments received for the from the public is considered for future recommendation report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Mohammed. Questions? Councillor Van Andriesch.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. When I'm looking at the map and seeing the subject land, in relationship to the cemetery, is it further back behind that lot? Where are we there?
Through Madam Mayor, it's further south to the cemetery.
You go south to the
It's
cemetery?
going to the south, yeah.
Okay.
The proposed lot is to the south.
And you talked about the church that's beside it, but that's not here.
That's
That's on
the church, and the cemetery is to the north of the subject property.
okay, all right, I got it. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this application? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this application? There was a hand over here. Do you wish to speak? Okay. Okay. The comments are the individual doesn't need to speak. He's here to answer any questions, so I'm not seeing any questions from council. All right, with that, there is a staff recommendation that staff report CD 24-133 for development application ZNPL 2024-276 be received as information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting shall be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Van Andriesch, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All in favor? That's carried. I'd just like to back up for a minute here on 4.2, the housekeeping bylaw. I don't think I opened it up for anyone on the line or in the room to speak. Is there anyone on the line or here present that wanted to speak to that bylaw? It will be back before us anyways, but okay. All right, we're on item 4.4, which is report CD 24-130 for Nixon Road.
Thank you. Yeah, final application today before you, subdivision and rezoning, and Mr. Sarah, I believe, is online. Fabian, if you want to take over for the development overview.
Thank you, Brandon. Through the chair, this application is for a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment to develop a subdivision that consists of 6 single detached residential dwelling lots in the hamlet of Nixon. The zoning bylaw amendment is to change a portion of the subject lands from agricultural to hamlet residential to conform to the official plan, and to add a special provision to address the proposed lot sizes for the 6 lots. Next slide, please. So the site context, the property is located at 2328 Nixon Road in the hamlet of Nixon. It's roughly 22 acres in size, or 8 hectares, and it's located at the intersection of Wyndham Road 13 and Nixon Road. For clarity, the property currently consists of a single detached dwelling, a farm field, and it's primarily covered in forested area. Next slide, please. So the site is currently designated hamlet, agricultural, and provincially significant wetlands in the Norfolk County official plan. And in terms of the zoning, the property is currently zoned agricultural. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, this application seeks the draft plan approved a draft plan of subdivision to construct a total of 6 single detached dwellings. These dwellings are proposed to be serviced via private well and septic systems. It should be noted that the initial mapping provided by the applicant indicated that the proposed lot sizes complied with the bylaw requirements. However, when they were overlaid with the official plan mapping, the lot sizes would have required an official plan amendment as well. In addition, just because of the way that the land's overlaid with the OP layer on top of it. So in lieu of exploring an official plan amendment, the applicant has chosen to reduce the lot sizes, which has led to the deficient lot sizes being proposed. For clarity, the hamlet residential zone requires that lot sizes be 0.4 hectares or 1 acre in size, and the lots being proposed are 3,006 square meters in size for a difference of 994 square meters. The updated mapping does not require that the exterior side yard be amended to facilitate the proposal, and this line of text should have been deleted from the slide there at the end, which it wasn't. Next slide, please. So in support of this application, a plan and justification report, a traffic impact brief, a environmental impact study, a stage 1 archaeological study, a functional servicing report, and a tree study have been submitted along with a draft plan of subdivision. Staff received technical comments but want to clarify that there are minimal concerns identified with the proposal, specifically from development engineering. It's been indicated that they're supportive of the rezoning, but note the following items are expected to be addressed through the draft plan of subdivision process, and they are as follows. The property resides in the Goodlit 1 drain, and at a minimum, the assessment schedule will need to be updated, and an easement or block conveyance will be required to encapsulate the existing Goodlit drain along Wyndham Road 13. The property also requires a hydrogeological study to confirm the lot sizing and the ability to support the private water and sanitary services, as well as an updated traffic brief to examine the new driveways being created to ensure that they do not create any operational issues. Attachment C in the public hearing materials contains the wholesome agency comments that were received for this project. So at the time of preparing the public hearing materials, staff had not received any public comments. However, I received public comments today at noon that will be incorporated into the final recommendation report package. To summarize the concerns from the member of the public, their concerns are essentially environmental concerns due to the impacts of the water table, drainage and stormwater runoff concerns, as well as traffic concerns as well due to the potential for more increased traffic in the area. Next slide, please. Preliminary considerations at this time relate to the need for additional housing, parking requirements, and servicing. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the proposals for a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment to develop 6 single detached dwellings in the hamlet of Nixon. Staff recommend that staff report CD 24-130 for development application 28 TPL 2024-288 and ZNPL 2024-331 be received for information, and that any comments received at this meeting be considered for the decision process in a future recommendation staff report. Thank you. That concludes staff's presentation. Available
Questions
for
to
any
staff?
questions.
Councilor Van Passen, your mic is still on.
Sorry.
It's okay. Any questions? Just a comment, staff, when you're giving the staff report for public record and for ease of council members, if we can just stay consistent with lot sizes. So you've said 3,000 square meters, 994 deficit, so it's, the requirement is 0.4 hectares and we're ending up with 0.3 hectares. That's the deviation, correct?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, that is correct.
Okay, I just want to be very clear for the public. Thank you. Seeing no questions, is there anyone here that wishes to speak? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll just get you to maybe come up one at a time, state your name for the public record, and then we'll keep you all three handy for questions, if that's okay. And it's the button on the right-hand side there.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Chambers. Okay. We live in the hamlet of Nixon because we want to live in the country. We do not want a survey. I look out my front window and I see trees in a field. That's why I live here. I've lived here for 35 years. If I wanted to live in a survey or near a survey, I'd live in Simcoe or Delhi or Waterford or whatever. What happens to our water levels? We're all in points, wells. What happens to our water level with these 6 houses there? Are we going to have problems with our water? If so, who pays for it? The county? Mr. Horvath? I can't afford to. Traffic, our road has already become very busy. 6 new houses means at least 12 more vehicles entering on Nixon Road, right across from my house. And I don't want that. If we allow this zoning change to allow for the survey, then there's going to be others. Joe Rodriguez wants to put a survey behind our properties. This is going to open up for him to do that. We don't want that also. So then we will not be living in a hamlet anymore. We'll be living in a little town. We want our hamlet to stay like it is, a hamlet, no surveys. Mr. Horvath has not lived here for 2 years. He moved to the Bruce Peninsula, where his closest neighbor is a mile or 2 down the road. He did not like how busy it was here in Nixon. But he's going to make it busier for us. He doesn't care. He's not here anymore. Okay? That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Whoever would like to come next, just state your name for the public record.
Hi, my name is Bonlin Van Biesen. I own a piece of property on Green Slade Drive in the village of Nixon. I've lived there 44 years as of last week. My biggest concern when I received this letter, the first thing that crossed my mind was about the water, whether our water will be affected by this. I have a sand point. It's only 15 feet deep, and I mean, I've never had problems with water. I'm not sure whether having more houses in the hamlet will affect that. I gather from what you were speaking about before, there is still going to be surveys done on this issue about the water and the traffic in the village. I presume we'll be getting further details as this progresses. Okay, well, that's really, I guess, my biggest concerns is, you know, I think our hamlet designation may end up being upgraded to something else. And, you know, when you've lived there, and that was the reason we bought that lot all those years ago and built our home there, because we loved the idea that we would have neighbors close by, not right on top of each other. Not that this would be the case either, but I just think it's something that's worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Helen Wall, and I live at 2331 Nixon Road, so this would be potentially kitty corner across from me. So we ended up buying this piece of property 16 years ago because we have fields across, fields behind, kind of neighbors on either side, but a lot of space between us. So this, we don't like the fact that there's a proposal of 6 houses going in across the road, kitty corner across the road, because we like the feeling of neighbors, but not all on top of each other and space in between us all. Same thing for us. We were worried about what's going to happen with our water. Is there going to be issues with running out of water? And then with tax purposes, is there going to be an increase on our taxes because of all this stuff going on down the road now? Yeah, pretty much the same thing those guys said, just how much does it take to turn a hamlet into a village? We want to keep it a hamlet. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for your comments. Darnell, I understand you did provide engineering comments. Do you want to make any comments today?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. I think we've identified the need for a hydrogeological study to be done, which should address the question raised about, the ability for the aquifer to be able to provide potable water to the new homes without undue impact to any adjoining properties that may be in the area. The traffic study, there was one submitted just in support of this rezoning. As we identified, I think there's further work to be done with respect to ensuring that sight lines would be maintained, especially at that intersection where we will now have, if approved, the addition of 6 additional driveways at that location. The roadway itself, Nixon, is certainly capable, capacity-wise, of addressing and accommodating the additional trips coming out of here. So it's more of a functional review that would need to be done for this plan of application. I believe, having those items addressed as we progress through the draft plan should respond to the concerns raised thus far.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this file? Okay. Staff recommendation before us. Make sure I'm on the right one. That staff report CD 24-130 for development application 28 TPL 2024-288 and ZNPL 2024-331 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered in a future recommendation report. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Van Andrieschie. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks for coming today. So more studies to answer some of your questions and a future report coming. Each application would be dealt with on an individual basis. So the survey wouldn't be, maybe a traffic survey could be applicable to another development potentially, but water and so on, and all of the staff work done is specific to this application, this file. So it's not giving approval to anything else, and they would need to advance their own planning applications separately. Thanks for coming. 3:48 p.m., a mover and a seconder for adjournment from the Public Hearing Committee. Councillor Huffman moves, Councillor Duthie seconds. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Good night.